4:30. Shall we go ahead and call this meeting to order? Looks like everybody's present. City Clerk Dean, if you would take roll, and then it's the first thing on our agenda. Can we get the agenda up on the screen? My computer's down.
Happening a lot.
What's that?
Happening a lot.
Well,
Yeah.
approval of minutes and then into rate study.
What do you think of the minutes? Yes?
There's some pun I could do some. I just can't forget the joke. I have no questions.
All right, the minutes are approved, and then right into the rates. Doesn't look like there's anybody here for public comment, so let's move into, is that what we're doing? Rate study first? Is that the first thing on there? Yeah. Okay, who's talking to us about that?
Last minute print, because I know everyone loves trying to zoom in on their computer or squint really far to see the.
Perfect.
Just say,
Thank
kind
you.
of a cheat sheet to read it better, but I'll be showcasing it in this one.
Just need longer arms.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. Yes,
You get it.
always. Thank you.
Okay. Let me get to screen sharing this for everyone else. Jimmy, actually, I need to be brought in as, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so just for context on what we're going over here, what you'll see in the agenda is the utility rate study discussion. And this has kind of been an ongoing discussion. We've been working through utility rate stuff for a while. Part of that package, of course, is the utility CIP projects themselves, which is a component of the rate study. So before we continue with the conversation that we had last week, we're going to do a quicker review of the assumed CIP, utility CIP projects that are kind of assumed as part of the rate study materials. They kind of represent that capital side of the total utility. And so I'd like to go through those in a quick way. But if you had specific requirements on how you'd like me to approach this review, let me know ahead of time. Otherwise, I'm kind of work through the list of them and end up at the end of it with an explanation of each of the projects and programs, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So kind of the underlying question I've gotten in that is the timing of the CIP project.
Yes.
Why are they timed where they are? Considering we've got a rate study coming back with a significant increase in rates.
Mhm.
More likely. One mechanism to relieve that is to kind of push things out a little bit. So why are they when they are?
Yeah, this is a long answer in a sense because there's so many of these projects, but I think you can kind of see the logic that we worked on it from with this perspective. We start with what we had. What did we have from the past 6-year CIP that we inherited in this biennium? So what did we complete? What is still needed to be completed? And what ended up on that CIP is really fundamentally a deep dive look at what our 3 system utility plan or our utility system plans. What do they say is critical projects? What is important for conveyance or for fire suppression in regards to water? And then there are a couple of other factors that end up in here, such as growth targets. If we have the utility needs to grow to meet the needs of, a future development or something like that, that's included in there. And each of the utilities has kind of a different set of rules and requirements and timing to try to achieve that. So we started there. And when we came into this year, we looked at what is actually going to be critical path on certain projects. So we did have some delays to try to match the timing of the need, so to speak. For example, source of supply, and you might have heard this is called ASR or aquifer recharge. This project is pretty tied to a well, the south well field. And so we wouldn't do South Wellfield without knowing the success of the ASR program. So we timed it so that the funding for the Wellfield matched up with the completion of the ASR, is insofar as we can know at this time. So some projects got delayed to try to match that timing up. Those will be important if ASR is successful or not. And we just needed to know the success of ASR to dictate what the scope will be fundamentally for that. That's a good example of how we delayed some. Some we worked with our water supervisor to discuss the agingness, how aged are some of our pumps and booster pump stations and PRVs and things of that nature. And that's kind of why you see a lot of our PRVs and that's why you see a lot of the PRVs and booster pump stations closer to the front, because some of them are aging they're getting quite aged, so to speak, and they need to be replaced. The potential for risk escalates over time. And so that's why you see some of them in the front. A couple of the other ones are in process and can't be delayed reasonably. For example, we would want to finish WRF phase 3 since we're pretty much done with it if it needs to wrap up next year. Sandy Cove, the stabilization efforts, very similar to that. It's kind of tied in permitting, and so we're working on it for next year. And that's true for a couple of the elements. So it is kind of a very mixed bag on why things are timed the way they are. But what we're really trying to achieve is making sure we're not overly increasing our risk and making sure that we're timing our projects as sequentially as appropriate for our staffing levels and ability and the development that we see. One detail that's kind of not shown here directly is when we assume development will happen. In this model, we have pushed the development a touch out because we did not forecast development in 2025 or 26. So this assumes, I believe, I can get you an exact answer in a minute, but most of the development is assumed in 27. So that's when we start to look at the projects that have the need for growth of the utility system to match. And typically, we'd also want to see GFCs and CAICs attached to that as well, which are included in. So that's a long-winded answer to what is actually a much more complicated answer is down the road, really. If you keep me going, I'll just keep diving into the weeds. There's more and more reasons. They're really truly interesting systems. And when you get real deep, it gets exciting for certain individuals. And yeah.
So you spoke to the Sandy Cove Park one. I'm looking at it as somebody who doesn't understand your job and these jobs nearly as well as you do, obviously. But I'm just looking at, to Councilman Holloway's point, looks like there's 11 big projects in 2025 and then 9 and then 9. Is that potentially because we haven't anticipated jobs that are going to be coming up? Or is it that there are some of these seem like they're kind of recurring things that happen year over year?
Yeah.
But there are, for example, the Canyon Springs Improvement Project.
Yep.
Is one that's coming up this year, and it looks like it doesn't come up
Again, till later.
again. It doesn't show up in the years listed on this sheet.
Right.
So to Councilman Holloway's point, is that one of them that, no, we really got to get that one done ASAP?
Yeah, and yeah, this is a good example of one that's kind of a more complicated to unravel. We tried to package work that when we do a system plan, they will give us a really deep dive list of tasks associated with different infrastructure. They don't call it this grouping of tasks, Canyon Springs improvements. They go, this section of line needs to be replaced at this rate, or this pump has this age factor, all these types of details. And what we do is we combine all that to try to make it into a sensible project to approach. In this case, what's going on is there's an urgent work that needs to be done for the chlorine generation to treat the water coming out of the Canyon Springs. The chlorine generator is undersized for the location. It's running too much. Too many hours on the pump means it could have risk of failure. And so what we want to do urgently is upscale the pump appropriately so it's not overrunning and try to meet the need. And then part of why we attach it to Canyon Springs is because it's trying to showcase all the work that we're doing at Canyon Springs. So one's a chlorine generator, but the work that happens in 2030 is really about stabilizing the line with a road to access point to our spring box. So that will come later when it's more urgent. And so this is an example of us trying to compartmentalize is not the right word, but to group like-minded.
Categorize?
Yeah, to categorize.
Okay.
And so there's a lot working into even each of these little items themselves.
I think my question was more simple. That one seems like it's sitting alone
Yeah.
on the horizontal. It's not gonna be a recurring project. And my question is that a project that we could put off a couple of years? It sounds to me like you're saying, no, not really, because there's other work that's dependent on that, that's also urgent.
One of the ways I've approached it is if there's a project that can be put off, I already put it off. I
Okay.
tried to already put it somewhere in like 28 to 29 if it's not urgent and not, what's the square, right? Urgent, important, critical, however that works. Essentially, if it can be delayed, I tried to delay it. I tried to make sure that we didn't have a year that was overwhelmed with the costs so that we didn't experience that high bond pull, just to try to smooth the years out. In addition to that, though, there is always this need urgently for some things. And so I try to not let anything that was risky get pushed. That's
Okay,
why
and just so that I don't give up the opportunity to complain at any point, is 2028 gonna be a really bad year? Is that gonna be a year when we're gonna be kind of
Swamped
inundated
with
with a whole bunch of these things coming, or is that also something that factors into your
no, yeah.
your scheduling?
What I did by putting it in 28 was gave us the flexibility to better understand what the need will be. So as we get closer and closer to 28, some of these projects will become the criticality will become more apparent to us.
So some of them might become a 27, some might become a 29.
Exactly. Yeah. So we give ourselves some breathing room, but we can worst case scenario fund it if needed.
Oh, well, yeah. You hear me say it all the time, but there's the catch up, keep up, step up, right? Catching up is the most expensive thing, right? So one of the things that we're trying to do is avoid getting it clobbered in 28, 29, because we deferred all this maintenance, right? So we have to keep up, because keeping up is our least expensive way to maintain the utility, is to, to manage the utility. We want to keep up with our maintenance. If we don't, then we're going to be paying for a lot of repairs in today's dollars and replacing it at a higher expense in tomorrow's dollars. So, maintaining our infrastructure is really important. And that's really what we're trying to do. We don't want to get killed in the future. And we don't want to, obviously we don't want to be splurging now because there's no need to. And also because the mill site looks like it's going to slip a little bit, we can slip everything back a little bit. So, but those are investments that we'll have to make if the mill site does develop.
I'm happy to also go through each of these projects as a kind of showcase here. You should be familiar with this kind of a document, right? So this was the same structure format as you've seen in the non-utility CIP. We have draft versions of.
And so this is another one of those projects that doesn't have a follow-up in the near years, right?
Yes,
The
right.
pressure reducing valve station project.
Right. So some projects happen now and we would need to address it in the future if the pressure reducing valve system were to fail. But this one is a good example of one that happens here now, in that we would do a whole new project if the time arrives that we needed to address pressure reducing valves later. There's actually 2 pressure reducing valve projects for different zones. If you think about the city vertically with water pressure at each level, pressure reducing valves are taking the water from a reservoir and making it usable to the residents below it without blowing their pipes out with 150 psi water or having no water at all because we've let it go too far, for example. So pressure reducing valves are to try to measure that. What we're seeing with pressure reducing valves in 2 different zones, hence 2 different projects, is that they're having some issues where customers further at ends of lines are either getting high or low pressure. So we want to correct it with new valves that account for that. So we'll see 2 different projects trying to achieve a kind of similar bend, but at different areas for different reasons.
Is that the kind of thing that could, say, blow out one of your pipes?
Yeah, it
Give you-
can.
yeah.
It can blow your pipes out, or it can leave you with very underwhelming pressure. You can kind of get either. A pressure reducing valve is trying to protect against the too high pressure thing. But in a sense, we have to review the whole pressure zone together and all the customers attached to that line and set our limits appropriately for the valve.
Councilmember Benson, it's especially important, the PSI, for having enough pressure in the fire hydrants.
Fire flow.
That's
correct,
a, yeah. great
Yeah,
example
for
too.
fire suppression on certain streets, because some are quite high, like up at 80 PSI. And then we have others that's more of the middle range is usually around like 50 PSI.
Yeah, that's pretty low. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's those ones at the end that, you know, can get lower pressures where you can't pump enough water, or there's no water supply to be able to put out a fire.
And that's kind of why these projects end up on the more urgent side of the whole list.
Got it.
And then I guess in final kind of, unless you want me to deep dive into each of the worksheets, happy to do. But you'll note some of the projects have a pretty big differential in cost, right? So waste treatment facility 3, not to tease Andrew, but that's a much more expensive project than a pressure reducing valve for the 705 zone. And so we have a couple of big projects, and we were trying to be pretty cognizant of the timing of those.
So what's the source of supply improvement project?
That project, actually, Jeff, you're the expert.
Sure.
I can dive into it, but
Source of supply improvements is actually focused primarily on our ASR, the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Program that we're currently pilot testing now. And if we're successful, that will add approximately 140 acre feet of new water supply to our system.
Sounds like a lot of water.
It's a lot of water. It'll definitely help us out with our limitations on instantaneous limits. So we have a annual limit and we have an instantaneous limit that we can draw from our sources. Where we are running short is on our instantaneous limit. And so what we need to find, and there's just you can't go out and buy a water right. There's just very few opportunities to gain more water. And so this is a good opportunity for us for actually a pretty small investment to gain quite a bit of extended water rights to address drought tolerance, resiliency, and then for limited growth.
So then do we already have the water rights to that land? It's just not perfect, is currently holding water?
Well, the way it's, all right, so water law is complex. However, what we have right now is a temporary water right to test this. So we draw water, we have about a 1 cubic foot per second water right from our spring right now, which is 900 gallons per minute, let's say. And that is 24/7, 365 days a year, we can take that much out of our spring. Well, in order to do this pilot test, we have applied for and received a temporary water right to take an additional 500 gallons per minute from the spring and pump it down, not really pump it, just push it right down into our aquifer to pump it up. And we'll do this, we're going to pilot test this to see how much of an effect it has and how much water. It's definitely going to have an effect. We've already run a model on it. We've created a model, we've tested it. We know that it's going to have a beneficial effect. We don't know how much yet, and that's what the pilot test is going to show us. A certain amount of that water that we push down into the aquifer leaks out into other aquifers down below, which helps maintain flow, a minimum base flow elevations in the river. Right, so it's actually a benefit to the stream, and that's why the ecology gave us $500,000 to study this, so that the way they see it, this kind of is an offset to all of the exempt wells that are downstream that are pulling water out of the aquifer already. So this offsets all that, right? This is a beneficial use. For doing that, we get a little bit out of that. So what doesn't leak out of our aquifer that we put down in, what doesn't leak out, we get to keep for consumption. And so that's the process for this source of supply. This also tidies up a bunch of our other water right issues. So it's kind of it's an account that we are using to make sure that we maintain all of our water rights in good standing.
And it's an ongoing project
It is an ongoing project, yeah.
happening right now in this biennium, and
I think it's been
what
going
you see there is
since.
the roll into the next biennium's work.
But long-term, we'll put 2 gallons into the aquifer and we'll get gallon and a half back.
That's about right, yeah. Well, yeah, we don't know that yet because we haven't pilot
That's
tested,
what
but
the
we get a
studies
certain amount
define.
back. Yeah, that's right. Remember, there's the in-stream flow rule, so there's only certain times of the year when we can actually do it. So the water right is limited by the in-stream flow rule. So during the winter time, the point is, what we're trying to do is take water when there's abundant water in the winter,
Winter water, make it
Store
summer
it.
water.
right? And then we get some of it back in the summer when there is no water, right? And it improves our instantaneous limit so that during periods in the summer when we're peaking on our water consumption, we have a little bit more to draw for things like primarily irrigation is what peaks us in the summer.
And it's 10 times more budgeted for 26 than 25.
Oh, yeah, this is to actually do the test to pilot, instead of creating a model, creating the actual test.
If it's successful, we'll have to do some improvements at the south well field to bypass water so we can push it back down the wells.
It'll be more
yeah,
expensive if
we just have to do a project.
All right.
Yeah, so it's really a bunch of piping.
Does that involve taking a bunch of fix-a-flat and plugging those leaks that are?
And now
Okay.
it's pipes and valves that bypass the pumps
Okay.
and send the water backwards into the wells.
Council people, anything else?
Ridge Street drainage improvement?
Hmm.
What's wrong with Ridge Street?
This is one of those catch-up
It's a
problems.
catch-up
Yeah.
project. It's a project that's been sitting there for a while. It's tree roots have intruded into the pipe and catch basin and destroyed the pipe. We've tried to maintain it for a while by cutting out roots and grouting it, but the tree just keeps growing. And what we really need to do is dig it up and replace a segment of pipe and carve out some roots around that area and just clean that up. It's not a big,
It's not a big project.
it's not
Whose trees are to blame? Or these aren't Phil's trees, are they?
yeah, they're Phil's trees.
They're Phil's trees,
But, it's just not the tree's fault.
So it's not due to a specific kind of tree or anything like that, or
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think maybe one particular tree has found a source of water and it just kind of worked its way into that pipe. It literally just destroyed that pipe. It found its way in and it just kind of grew in and it collapsed the pipe, and it needs to be cut the root out, replace a segment of pipe.
it's a lazy tree. We don't need any freeloader trees in this town.
Right.
Yeah.
Where's the SR 202 drainage improvement project gonna be?
Yeah.
So that's kind of I think it's mostly a two-parter. You could think of it as a section over here on Railroad on our side of Railroad or 202. And then another section that's from approximately northern.
Or the northern defer,
Yeah,
yeah.
northern to Passfur through.
Mhm.
So it's this side again, it's the same side of the street. It's to correct essentially the ditch in the way the ditch is interacting with both the railroad tracks and how it's conveying down the line. I believe is problematic.
We have old undersized stormwater conveyance systems in those locations, which aren't draining and are cause us problems. And so those need to be corrected. And hopefully we are hoping to like, for instance, one of those we can probably take care of with the Town Center Phase 3 project.
I was just gonna ask if they were gonna be coordinated together.
We're going to try to do that. Yes, absolutely.
Coordinated, not together. The state would get mad at me for saying they're together. They are separate projects as
Yeah.
far as our grant application and the scope of work that we have submitted to them. But we will be aware of this project, and also is scheduled out to 28, kind of to capture that criticality detail.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember Cotton? No? And you folded your things, so there's nothing else from you, right?
No, I'm good.
All right, anything else that we need to know about here?
No, just a note that you'll be seeing this soon. A lot of the work that you'll be kind of working through with the rate study is in fact the sources for a lot of these projects. So that's why I didn't want to send this out because it's underwhelming. It doesn't have the like sources made up yet, right? And so that's a lot of the conversation that's happening next. The sheet in front of you will actually have a top section that goes into all those details. And so I just kind of wanted to contextualize what I was showcasing here and what you got there. And I guess now I can lead right into the rate study conversation.
Yeah, I just want to say, no big surprise. It sounds like real thought is going into this, and we appreciate you explaining it. It's helpful to be able to give an answer if we're ever asked a question on why the heck are we doing this one right now?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I do try to write I work with all of the project managers themselves on the sheets to try to make sure that if you do get a question like that, you should be able to grab this sheet, hand it to them, or read it real quick and remind yourself exactly what's going on, and the what, why, and how, and what the impacts are. So hopefully that's beneficial as well. Okay, Paul, I think I'm gonna set you up here in a second, but so I believe you've only heard from FCS Group's Sergey before with regards to rate studies, but we have also worked with Paul Quinn, who's tonight's speaker. And so, yeah, I'm gonna introduce Paul. I'm gonna let him kind of jump into his presentation that's kind of picking up from where we left off, and then we'll kind of work through some of the what's next and what's gonna be asked of us. So I'll let you go, Paul.
Okay. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, thanks Dylan for introducing myself. I'm Paul Quinn. I'm Assistant Project Manager at FCS. As Dylan noted, you've heard previously from Sergey Tarasov. He spoke with you all 2 weeks ago regarding the rate study and more specifically on the cost of service. So I'm here tonight to delve back into the cost of service and update you really on the sewer phase-in scenarios that we've developed. We'll start though with a quick agenda. I'm going to talk about the rate setting process briefly to remind you kind of what we go into, the different steps. We'll recap the revenue requirement for the utilities. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to spend most of our time talking about the cost of service, the different phase-in alternatives we've developed, and some of the bill impacts for our different customer types. So here we have the graphic that shows the rate setting process. We typically like to think about it in 3 different steps. We have step 1, the revenue requirement that defines the overall needs for each utility. What are the rate adjustments that are needed by utility, by year in the forecast? Once we've determined that overall need, we move to step 2, the cost of service. That is going to allocate all the different line items of the revenue requirement to our different customer groups so we can determine what it actually costs us to serve different customer types. And finally, step 3 is where we bring together the results from both the step 1 and step 2, and we actually design the rates themselves. So as a quick recap on the revenue requirement, step 1, we presented a few 3 options to council in early July. Those options for each utility were, what if we decided to just cash finance the entire CIP? That resulted in the highest rate impacts for our customers. The other bookend was, what if we tried to maximize debt to really buy down rate increases as much as we can? And the third scenario was something in the middle, a hybrid option. What if we fell somewhere in between the cash only or the maximum debt scenario? So based on our discussions from that meeting, we received some direction to move forward with the maximum debt scenario for the sewer utility. And we wanted to develop 1 additional scenario each for the water and stormwater utility that fell somewhere between that hybrid and max debt scenario. So what I'm showing you in this table is the combined bill impacts for the max debt sewer scenario and the 2 updated scenarios for the water and stormwater utility. What we can see here is for a typical single-family residential customer, they're paying about $177 per month combined for the 3 utilities. Under the proposed scenarios, we would increase their bill by about $22 per month in 2025, followed by $9 to $13 per month impacts thereafter. Now, it is important to note that the impacts I'm showing you here assume across-the-board adjustments. In other words, we would increase all customer bills or rates by the same percentage by utility. This does not, in other words, this does not factor in, excuse me, any cost of service phase-in adjustments that we might perform. However, for residential, the phase-in options that we've set up for you all are pretty close to what I'm showing you here. So once we've defined the overall needs by utility, we move to step 2. That's the cost of service. As I mentioned before, we take all the different line item costs that make up our revenue requirement, and we're going to allocate those unique costs to our customer classes based on their demands that they place on the system. Ultimately, what we're trying to get out here is what does it cost us to serve, our different customer types? We can then compare those total costs against how we're collecting revenue to see if there's any, mismatches or misalignments of how we're currently collecting revenue versus what it actually costs us to serve those customer types. So we're going to jump back into the results now. We're starting with water. If I could draw your attention to the graphic on the top left, that solid black line at 0%, that represents our true cost of service target. You'll see 10% above and 10% below, we have those dashed lines. And so those dashed lines make up the what I like to call the range of reasonableness for our cost of service results. Cost of service is really just kind of a look at 1 year, at a time. So in this case, 2025. What we know is that over time, the way our customers use the system can change. The proportionality of our operating expenses can change. So what I'm talking about there is labor costs may go up, non-labor costs might stay the same, benefit costs might go up. So that proportionality might shift over time. And the actual makeup of our assets might change over time, depending on certain regulatory needs or requirements, or new capacity assets that we need to introduce into the system. And so the cost of service target is really a moving target. We know that there can be shifts over time. And so it's great to target that true cost of service, that solid black line at 0%. But if we can get our customer classes within that plus or minus 10%, that range of reasonableness, we can be fairly confident to say that we're collecting revenues that are covering the cost to serve those customer classes. And so if we look at that graphic, what we can see for water is our residential and our commercial customers are within that plus or minus 10% range of reasonableness. In other words, the way we're currently collecting revenue for them is collecting their costs pretty adequately. What we see for multifamily are their costs are lower than how we're currently collecting revenue. So in other words, multifamily is paying more than what it actually costs to serve them. On the other side, our irrigation customers, their costs are higher than how we're currently collecting revenue. So those customers are paying less than what it currently costs us to serve them. And just as a reference point, we did look at these, the cost of service a couple of years ago at the past rate study, and these findings are fairly consistent with what we were seeing a couple of years ago. So now that we've identified the results for cost of service, the real question is, what do we want to do with these results? Typically, what we will develop is a phase-in option. So we'll make gradual progress over time to try and get our customers within the range or to true cost of service. And so this is the exact phase-in option that we presented to you 2 weeks ago. So what we're proposing here, to keep residential customers equal to the system average increase. We're really trying to focus on making or making improvements on our multifamily customers and our irrigation customers. So for water, we would propose to freeze multifamily rates where they currently are for the next 6 years. So even though we're increasing our water rates by 5 to 6% per year, our multifamily customers would see no increase to their water bills over this 6-year period. And by doing that, we're able to kind of phase their costs in to try and align with how we're collecting revenue. On the flip side, our irrigation customers, they need to go up. So we're proposing to increase them a little more than the system average. Now, to help mitigate potential impacts, we've deliberately set their annual increases below the double-digit mark. So again, we're just kind of making gradual progress for them over time. If we look out to 2030, based on this forecast, we will have made about 60% progress for our multifamily customers to that range of reasonableness, and about 50% progress for our irrigation customers. We'll shift gears now, look at the sewer results, again, drawing your attention to the graphic on the top left. So what we can see here is our low strength commercial customers are within that range of reasonableness. Our residential customers are just outside that range, so they're paying just a little bit more than what it costs to serve them. Just like we saw in water, our multifamily customers are outside that range and they're paying more than what it costs to serve that class of customers. And our high strength commercial customers, their costs are greater than our current revenue collection. In other words, they're paying below what it currently costs to serve them. Just like what we saw with water, these results are consistent with what we saw a couple of years ago. And so same question like we talked about with water. Now we have the results. What do we want to do with them? 2 weeks ago, we brought to you option 1, so that proposal on the top. Here we're really focusing on making ground for our multifamily and high strength commercial users. All users saw an increase in the first 2 years, but after that, we were freezing the multifamily rates for the last 4 years. Based on our feedback, we wanted to develop 2 additional phase-in options for tonight's consideration. Option 2 is where we have the upfront multifamily increases for sewer. So instead of a 14% and 4%, we're doing a 7% and 2% in 25 and 26, and then continuing to freeze their rates thereafter. Option 3, we would have no upfront increases for multifamily, so freezing their rates for 2 years. We're able to make a lot of progress by doing that, and so thereafter we would set their increase equal to what we're doing for our single family residential customers. Now, since we are lowering our multifamily proposed increase, the system total, our revenue requirement target isn't changing. So we're lowering the amount of revenue we're proposing to collect from multifamily. We have to increase the amount of revenue from some other class or multiple classes of service. So what we've done under both option 2 and option 3 is we're spreading that burden equally amongst our commercial and our reclaimed water customers. So in option 2, we're increasing their results by about 2.5% relative to option 1 in 25, and they're being increased by about 0.5% relative to option 1 in 26. Under option 3, those 3 classes are being increased by an additional 5% in 2025 relative to option 1, and an additional 1% in 26. What we ended up doing for our single family residential customers is keeping the same phase-in percentage proposals equal under all 3 options. The reason for that is if we increase their proposed rate adjustments any higher, we're really going to start pushing them outside that range of reasonableness. And so we thought it would be prudent to keep them where we had them under option 1, so we can continue to make progress toward that cost of service goal rather than to move away from it under option 2 and option 3. The other item I wanted to note here before we start looking at some bill impacts, I just wanted to note, what we're doing or the progress we're making on multifamily. Under option 1, we're able to get them within that 10% range of reasonableness by 2029. Under option 2, we get them within that range in 27, and option 3, we're actually able to get them within that range, almost immediately by the end of 2025. So next couple, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Can you go back to that range of reasonableness graph for sewer? Yeah, because it looks like residential is also in, they're outside that range as well. And if you could flip back to where go forward one more slide to where we were. If you look at the 2.5% from 27 through 30, that 2.5% is a bigger 2.5% than the multifamily 2.5% there too. I guess I'm wondering, right? Because it's 2.5% based on, after 2 years of 18 and 6,
Mhm.
right? So it's a bigger 2.5%. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I'm wondering if there is an option where maybe multifamily does go up one of those first 2 years and residential comes down just a little bit. Is that ridiculous? Is that a ridiculous thought?
No, I mean, so when we think about these phase-ins, there's thousands of different scenarios we can run. So what we heard, 2 weeks ago is we really wanted to make progress on multifamily. Let's focus on them. What we've done here for residential is we're still making progress, albeit we're doing it more slowly. We're doing it over a 6-year window instead of trying to kind of front load it. So if what I'm hearing from you is no, we want to make progress not only on multifamily quickly, we want to make it on our single family residential customers more quickly as well. That is certainly an option that we could develop and bring back for your consideration.
Well, I think on the sewer, it looks like the residential is also outside that range of reasonableness.
Mhm.
And all of the percentages that follow in 26, 27 and on are going to be coming after that 18.5 and 25. 18.5 is a lot. And 18.5 is a lot. So trying to figure out now, at the same time, I see that the commercial and the reclaimed are taking a big hit there as well. And I think we need on the other range of reasonableness for the water, I think we also need to talk about, because when you were talking about it early, Mr. Hamlin, or maybe it was you, Dylan, at an earlier meeting, you were talking about how, as far as reclaimed water is concerned, we got to reclaim water regardless. We've got to reclaim that water. So I'm wondering how fair it is to lay on commercial or retail irrigation the responsibility for that entire graph when it's something that we need to do in order to offset potable water anyway.
Yeah, and just to add some clarity, the reclaimed water ends up on the sewer, not water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it's a byproduct of the treatment. And
Okay.
it's a utilization of a resource rather than just putting it in the river. Provides other benefits, but we've gone over this a lot of times. I don't want to dig into the weeds. Just to make sure here it's shown it's part of the sewer.
Right. I think you're going to have to go over it a lot more times before I finally get it. Can you go back one slide one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So then on this graph, right, is that, so my eyes are terrible. It's the last graph there, the one within the range of reasonableness that is the reclaimed water.
This is 8.6.
Okay, then
6.8, sorry.
okay, so then the irrigation graph,
Yep.
the one that shows it, yeah, this one right here, is not related to the fact that, I mean, we got to reclaim the water, right?
Yeah, we can do irrigation with potable water and with Class A water, but not everyone has access to Class A water.
So is some of our retail irrigation being done with potable water?
Yes, yeah, for sure. And I don't know exactly what balance, but
It's more.
yeah.
It's more than the reclaim.
Well, that stinks. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, keep going. I apologize. I slowed you down.
Oh, no worries. Let me get back. So again, these are the 3 options now for sewer. And so what we showed you last time was some proposed bill impacts for an average user under different classes. I wanted to expand on that, show you how things change depending on which sewer option we're looking at. So starting with our single family residential customers, you can see the three options here. As I mentioned before, under all three sewer phase-in options, we're keeping their proposed adjustments the same. So their impacts, regardless of what option we're looking at, are the same. They would see about a $21 or $22 monthly increase in their bills in 25, followed by anywhere from $9 to $12 per month thereafter, depending on what year we're looking at. For our
Councilman
multi, yep,
Question on this showing the overall increase with residential as being like 12.11%. Yet on the previous slide, you were saying 18.5% increase.
mhm.
just sewer, yeah. So when we're looking at this, we're
Oh,
looking
this
at
is the combined.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
This
oh,
is looking
sorry.
at the ramifications of choosing 3 different sewer rates combined all into one utility for just residential. So
Okay.
not looking at multifamily. That is covered.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But what I think Paul's about to say is the reason that those numbers are all the same is because in the 3 proposed sewer options, the
Residential
didn't
was the
change.
same,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry,
Thanks,
Paul.
Dylan. So that's our single family residential. Multifamily, our multifamily customers would see the highest upfront increase in 25 under option 1. So about an average multifamily customer, about a $60 increase per month to their bill in 25. Under option 2, where we're just having that sewer increase, so water continues to be frozen, and stormwater, we're not changing that under this option. So they would see about a $33 increase per month on their bill in 25. And under option 3, where we would freeze the sewer increases for multifamily in 25 and 26, they would see a $6 to $7 combined impact per month in 25, 26, followed by $16 to $20 per month, depending on which year we're looking at thereafter. For our low strength commercial users, option 1 would see an increase in 25 of about $51. That's followed by anywhere from $27 to $33 per month of an increase, depending on which year we're looking at. In option 2, they're going to see a slightly higher increase because now we're lowering the multifamily sewer increase, so we still need to collect our overall dollar target. So the commercial low customers are going up a little higher. So instead of a $51 impact per month up front, they would see about a $55, $56 impact. And then under option 3, that would increase a little more to about a $60 per month impact for our low strength commercial users. And finally, for our high strength commercial users, an average bill would see about a $450 or $460 monthly increase in 25 under option 1. That would increase by about $40 per month to $490 of an increase under option 2. And then under option 3, those customers on average would see an increase of about $530 per month in 25, followed by, you can see 6 to 10% increase thereafter for those users. So really, I mean, that was the update. I wanted to update you on those new proposed sewer phase-in scenarios. There are a couple direction or feedback points where we're looking for you from. In terms of the overall revenue requirement, we have the max debt for sewer. We have a somewhere between hybrid and max debt for water and stormwater. So are we okay to kind of move forward with that? And then on cost of service, there's, as I mentioned, there's thousands of different options we can move forward with here. Number 1, we could postpone making any adjustments. So increase all customers by the same percentage for each utility, regardless of, what kind of user they are, high or low, residential, commercial. We could be really aggressive and make cost of service changes in, 1 year all up front. Not something we typically recommend, but we have seen folks do it before. And then on the phase-in side, do we want to phase in their results over time? And if so, which sewer option do you most align with? The option 1, option 2, or option 3. As a reminder, rates would go into effect January 1st of each year, and we do have an additional analysis we're working on. It's a general facility charge. We're currently working on that, and we're going to hopefully bring that to your attention and consideration in the next couple months. So any thoughts or questions at this time?
Yeah, don't disappear. I have a question. Do you guys have initial thoughts on these 3 options? You're thinking 2. What's your reasoning?
I feel that even though it's, we're working to the same goal for the multifamily, but I didn't want to see us like hit everybody hard, the other groups as in option 3.
It seemed like commercial took a really
Yeah.
hard in the teeth on that one.
The high commercials, which could maybe potentially affect some of our businesses. And so
It also seemed to me that in that option 2, the rate of increase on the overall bill for the multifamily was very reasonable.
yeah,
It wasn't, and significantly lower than the other categories.
Right.
So, it is a clear step in the right direction,
right.
for right sizing those bills.
Yeah.
So I was feeling the same way. Did you have thoughts, or you don't usually like to share them until you're ready to share them? I don't want to pressure you.
I have different thoughts. I'm leaning toward option 2, but I also, push comes to shove, what do I stop watering first? Flowers. Where irrigation is flowers. Now we intentionally shifted costs out of them in the past because we like them using our potable water, but we may want to shift more of those costs in that direction now, considering
Reclaimed water, right?
Reclaimed water for them for irrigation, which is the irrigation rate. We're having to put a big old reservoir in, whole new systems in, and everything else. So option 2 here, I'm just thinking of the broader picture. I do not like pegging the needle on the changes.
Yeah.
Again, there's some upfront assumptions. When we started all this, high commercial didn't exist. So we added new assumptions that all came in, and we did have some businesses coming in here telling us you're going to drive us out of business. I think the 2, one's pretty stable. So I'm reluctant to peg it because we may change assumptions. Analysis may show something else, or we may have a different direction we want to go in splitting of costs in here. So yeah, option 3, I'm not in favor of. I'd like to lessen a little bit, so option 2.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Quinn, anybody have any questions for Mr. Quinn? Thank you, that was really well explained. Appreciate your analysis.
Sure thing. And we're always available. So if you guys have any follow-up questions you want to ask, follow up with staff, or you can follow up directly with me or Sergey.
So before we leave this topic, thank you, Paul. Excellent work. So I heard option 2, and I just want to clarify the next steps. So what we can do here is either take this presentation and this discussion to council next Monday, or alternatively, we don't have to. We could assume option 2, and we can work straight towards GFC discussions for the following Parks and Public Works Committee meeting. And then one last thing is GFCs are in here. CAIC is another addition to that, but there's one more conversation, which is going to be variable versus fixed costs. So we've been talking about irrigation and water, and the first thing you stop when bills get tight is stop watering flowers. In a sense, fixed costs are just what it costs to be connected to our system, and variable costs are when you overwater your yard, or you run your sprinklers all day and night and you use up a lot of water, we charge more. So what percentage do we want to lean on fixed costs versus variable costs is another conversation that comes up right after this. And so that keep that target in your mind as we start to look at these options in further detail. So that's a lot, but really what I'm looking at January 1st, 2025 and I'm gonna see what I can do to get us there as best I can while meeting all the needs. And so I'm nudging us, trying to nudge us. And so I just want to know that the bringing GFC charge presentation to the next Parks and Public Works Committee meeting would be appropriate. Would you like me to go to council to further discuss options 1 through 3 here? How would you like me to move forward?
It sounds to me like we're in favor of option 2, but I do know 4 other people who would
Have
not want
opinions?
3 of us to make
Have opinions?
assumptions. So I think that if you did make a short presentation on this, you know, we've had the long presentation, and it's a conversation that we can give our opinions on, because it sounds like we've come to similar opinions.
Does it make more sense to do them separately, or to go to council with, like, after we review the GFCs and do the options and the GFC together as a presentation, or is that too much?
Yeah, that's almost asking me a bit of a political question. In theory, we could have one presentation and wrap the whole thing into one giant ordinance and just move forward. But what we're doing by breaking it apart is making sure there's opportunity to discuss it in pieces. And GFCs can be a big discussion with regards to development in the future. The fixed rate versus variable rates might actually be a quicker conversation.
It seems to me that if we have this conversation at council and then go right into GFCs at the next Parks and Public Works,
Yeah.
then we're moving the ball forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, we may keep the council discussion at the combined utility level.
Okay.
So it's
Right,
not shorter.
right.
Uh,
That's a good idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or at least heavy on that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, heavy on the
Keep
combined.
the other
utility
slides in your
components.
back pocket in case somebody wants to dive into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
just have them
Because
ready
you
for
know that'll
Joe.
happen.
Yeah, right. Okay. In that case, I think I have my marching orders, unless no, Drew's got it.
Well, so we do have a council roundtable currently scheduled right now. If we do shrink this presentation slightly, it may not require a council roundtable at 6 o'clock. So just want to make that aware. Would that be okay with the committee? If we forego the council roundtable and try to bring this back as a discussion item or presentation at the 7 o'clock council meeting, or especially if it's a shortened version of this?
Either way, I don't think this is an hour conversation.
No. No,
We
but
could go for a while.
I will
but don't
say,
think-
if we schedule an hour for it, it will be.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's necessary that it be an hour conversation. So my inclination would be to say, no, let's not do an hour-long roundtable on this. Are we agreed on that? Yeah.
Well, wait, you made conditional.
Is there other things we?
Do you
can
want a
talk
half
about?
hour round-table?
Yeah.
Or do you want to take this and combine it into the council agenda?
That seems like the way to go.
Okay.
Yeah. To me, what, you got
How-
thoughts,
How big's the?
City Clerk Dean?
The 7 o'clock's pretty heavy. And there's an executive session.
How about we just do a half hour roundtable?
If you guys think so, yeah, okay, all right, so we're already heavy on Monday. Okay,
Monday's a holiday.
Dylan, did you have? something?
Yeah, I
we're
could
a
give you
day
one,
late and we're happy.
Story of my life.
one more
But
option.
anyway.
We could grab a couple of these, like we could continue to go forward and avoid this more stacked meeting. Go straight into the GFC's conversation. We could even go into the balancing of variable and fixed costs, bring them all to a 1 hour roundtable meeting. The only risk there, as I see it, is that if there's a lot of interest in going back again, then we kind of have to re-unpack everything. Whereas if it's pretty consolidated and you feel like your other council members are feeling pretty, agree with your perspectives on this, we're not going to backtrack too much. That would make it very fast.
I don't see that.
You don't see
I
that.
I see a lot of questions.
My concern would be losing the opportunity to push the ball down the field. And so I would rather do the half hour roundtable than miss that opportunity to keep moving forward on this.
At least, yeah,
Is that,
get things, while they're clear in our mind, get it done and then move on to the next topic.
yeah, and you're responsible for remembering everything.
Okay. I will
Good,
do
all
that.
right.
Yeah.
Does that suit the mayor, can I ask, or what?
Well, I'm just curious about, you've seen this a couple times now in this committee, but the rest of them haven't. So I think there's gonna probably be a lot of questions regarding it and concerns. I mean, those are pretty big increases, so there might be more discussion. So when you talk about roundtable, it's usually gonna be like 50 minutes, right? Because you need the 10 minutes to get ready for the next meeting. So if you do half hour, then you need to be here at, I don't know,
Well, I think if somebody wants to
6:20.
get down to a discussion on cost per flush, we can invite them back to this committee week after council to get into that in-depth conversation.
And I think to that point, this was sent back to this committee so that we could look at it and return to council with recommendations. So yes, we could easily do another hour-long roundtable, but that wouldn't be in line with the spirit of why we're going over it here. At least as I understood it from the council when we talked about it before.
true.
Am
You're
I-
still gonna get all the questions though.
Huh?
You're still gonna get all the questions.
It's totally fair. I think that all of our council members have real opinions, especially when it comes down to percentages of increase of costs and on residents. So I think that's a fair point.
Because also during the council meeting, we start talking about property tax. And so there'll be presentations and discussion regarding that. So that will also take quite a bit of time.
So are you advocating the
Round-
6 o'clock roundtable?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm slightly confused because we started with roundtable or no roundtable. And we compromised on half of that. 30-minute roundtable. Now we're saying a roundtable is an hour or it's not, doesn't exist.
Well, I didn't say
I
that.
think the conversation goes the amount that we give it. But we give it 30 minutes. If there's further questions from there, we can handle it outside of roundtable, have them come to committee or go have a discussion off to the side. But again, that partially depends upon if we can keep it at that higher level of the combined utility rate.
Okay, well, I was gonna suggest a 2-hour roundtable at this point. So.
And then compromise on what?
Okay, you feel good about getting it done in half an hour too then? My general sense is that the council wanted Parks and Public Works to look into this and come with recommendations and not redo all of it within the full council meeting. So it seems to me that a half an hour roundtable is a reasonable alternative. That's my opinion.
And then we need extra time to break between the two. Is that what you're saying?
Usually, yeah.
Okay.
So it'd be a 25-minute.
25-minute roundtable with a 5-minute break. You can do it, right, Dylan? You can do anything.
I think there's a lot of people that need a lot of box of chocolates. So especially Paul and Sergey. So anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Got any leftover Halloween candy?
Yeah.
And that also, I mean, if we're wrong and the conversation wants to go beyond 30, we're gonna have another opportunity. We're gonna bring GFC's other back, probably another roundtable opportunity. And we can roll the conversation into it, keep the next one in an hour and keep going.
This
We've got
feels
opportunity to do these things.
very much like a status update. So we're providing a status update to your fellow council members that aren't present right here. I guess as suggested, if they do have questions resulting from the status update, that there's a forum in which they can address those questions, and that's at the next Parks Public Works Committee meeting. We're also happy to accept those questions as well by email too, and start creating a log and trying to answer those questions through there. But I also enjoy having the Parks and Public Works Committee also potentially collectively together make a recommendation to their fellow council members when it comes to this too.
Which I feel like we're kind of, that's where we're at, right? At least on this part of it. Okay.
What's next?
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks. Have a good night.
This is gonna be a water reclamation facility.
That's right. Yep. Thank you.
I don't know where you are in winning your Atari game.
I think I'm gonna beat the big boss. Yeah.
Good evening. So this presentation is going to be an update on the Water Reclamation Facility Phase 3 construction project. Last time we gave an update, it was June. I think some of you made it out to facility. Is about 50% of the way complete, and we're now approximately 80% of the way complete. We're 3 to 6 months ahead of schedule, and we're realizing increased capacity, and we're seeing some really good performance coming out of the facility. So I'm going to quickly go through what we've seen over the last 4 or 5 months. So recap, the project includes improvements to the headworks, which included a new grit system and a headwork screen. That's 100% complete. The headwork screen, actually, the old one failed about 3 days before we put in the new one. So that was a timely improvement. The oxidation ditch, that project is the bulk of this, and it's 80% complete. We're currently operating on the new Basin 2, which is the basin on the right, while we're retrofitting Basin 1, which is the one on the left. Up in the corner of the solids handling facility, that project portion is about 50% complete. We've retrofitted one digester. We're going to be starting that up next week, and then we will retrofit the second digester. And then the Kimball Creek lift station project, kind of in the foreground. That portion of the project is delayed due to some long leads on electrical equipment, but the work will be completed summer 2025. Again, recap, we're moving ahead. We're ahead of schedule at the WRF facility improvements, and we are expecting completion January 2025 on that portion of the project. So here, this is Basin 1. They're doing the installing new partition walls and making the center walls seismically upgraded. So there's been about 7 substantial concrete pours as part of that project. Been a lot of extensive mechanical and electrical improvements. All of this work has to get tested. There's alarms. It's built into the SCADA programming. So over the summer, we spent a lot of time testing out, making sure that all the backup alarms were in place. Here is the digesters with the new jet aeration equipment. This was just taken last week, and we'll be filling that digester with solids later this week and starting it up.
You'll let that guy out first, though, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I did want to hit on Basin 2 startup. This is a pretty significant part of the project. It took about 3 to 4 months, and we decommissioned the old biological process that had been in place for about 25 years, and we grew a new population of biota. On the left, that's about, the beaker on the left is about 3 days into the process. You can see how cloudy the water is. We had to retreat all that during the process. This was an engineered plan. And then about 4 weeks later, the beaker on the right shows how the bacteria grew, and we have a much clearer effluent, which is what we were working towards in all of this. And then the tanks changed along the way. But overall, we're seeing, we call it sludge. The bacteria settle about twice as fast as in the previous process, which that means you need half the tank volume to clear it up, which is really good for our clarifiers. You know, we're not going to need to build a new clarifier for some time now. So that's really promising.
Wait, and that's because of the efficiency of the biota?
That's right, yeah. So how dark that bottom layer is and how quickly it settles improves
Did we
the
just have
performance.
like really lazy biota before?
We had a different type. Yeah, we had something called filaments, too many of them, and they don't settle as quickly. So we are already, you know, after about 2 months, we were seeing.
Does the new
twice as
biota have a
fast.
name? What's the difference?
We call it
Is it more rods or
denser. Yeah,
Sure. Okay.
densified the process. So
can we, I know you guys kind of use a lot of keywords like solids and effluent, and can we not really say what it is?
There's a lot of different terms for it. Yeah, mixed liquor, bugs, biota. There's a lot of different, but we are seeing some really promising results, and it was pretty exciting to see it take place and grow over the summer. So
Do we have a, I'm totally off topic, and I apologize. And maybe this is an off question, but do we have a way moving forward to keep the biota efficient?
Mhm.
We had biota, we let it go for, I don't know how many years before we did this, and it appears that it had gotten weak. Probably a bad term, but I'll use it.
there,
How do we keep this new biota in peak condition moving forward?
It's the process, but Andrew
Okay.
can explain it. Yeah.
Different, yeah.
yeah, the biota is a product of the process. So before we used to have a big mixer that would spin really fast and chew up the water, and it results in a certain kind of tougher biota that don't settle very well. Now we have this very delicate bubbler that results in kind of a, I guess, a more delicate sludge that will settle.
So you're
it has
being
to
nicer to them.
Oh,
I like
It-
that.
So it's a product of.
That's a
of-
good lesson. You be
of the
nicer to your
process.
workers and they do a good job. I like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
But and then the operators, they monitor it every day. So they look at numbers every day to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Impressive.
That's neat.
Yeah. And then just highlights, over the summer, the operations, city sewer operations and the project team, there's a lot of collaboration, bringing up concerns, quickly, and then communicating, working through them. The process commissioning and decommissioning, while we grew the biota, we actually had to dispose of 25,000 pounds of old biota over a couple weeks, and do that without any violations in our NPDS permit, which we successfully did, which that was a very, that's a win.
Where
And
did they
then,
go?
what was it?
Where do they go?
We have the solids handling facility, so it goes through the composter, but we were running
Goes
it
to
kind
Eastern
of.
Washington.
Yeah,
Goes
Eastern
to
Washington,
Goes to
yeah.
Eastern Washington.
They took him to a farm to retire.
Yeah, it gets processed for biosolids for farms, but we ran those facilities kind of at max capacity for a couple weeks. And then all the new equipment, our operation staff were getting trained on, and from what we're seeing, we're seeing 25% additional capacity in our process right off the bat here. So we are ahead of schedule. We will have capacity for the casino to come online. And then just to wrap up, talking about that decommissioning and commissioning, the process has been in flux for about 3 or 4 months, and our operations staff are used to steady state, constant operation. So kudos to the wastewater staff for leaning in and working through some of these changes, and helping with the project. And we're looking forward to, I think we're going to be turning the corner and wrapping up the project in the next couple months. So I'm happy to answer any questions or go more over biota if you'd like.
I haven't seen anybody get like such a happy face talking about biota.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you for informing us. All right. Oh, you got something there?
And I would also say it's very impressive to, be 85% complete. Seems like everything kind of fell right where it needed to be, right? Because we were concerned about weather and all the different things. So when you're taking part of the ditch offline, and anyway, so nice job on the whole project. So,
Nice work.
and a couple year projects, that's very impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would definitely pass that along to RH2. They engineered our plan through the summer. We had an approved plan for this whole project. So it wasn't just, making decisions off the fly. So kudos to RH2 on their design.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's next?
Legislative priority.
Council priorities?
And there is a version of it attached to the minutes.
Is there a way for us to get it up on the screen?
And the two things of real significance, at least for this committee, one is community center. And focus for the legislators on. It's incorrectly stated as $5 million state funding, but it's really 4 million county, 1 million Scotia state. That's a priority for us with them when we do have conversation with them. The other one, I'm not saying that any of these aren't focused for us individually, but for the committee,
About SR 18 and the
is
parkway.
Highway 18. That project stays on track and reaches conclusion.
Those on here too, right?
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's been some kind of, well, there has been some second guessing of content design, but at this stage, I think we're at water under the bridge. But let's make sure the project keeps going, keeps funded, and if possible, even like it expanded down a little further on Highway 18, but that kind of starts to get out of our scope of concern. So you might look at that, see if we want to have input on that.
Parkway.
And Parkway, yeah, that's
super important.
super important. And I'm a little, election season, so I'm a little concerned of there may be some changing seats. And we really do need to have conversations to keep this conversation going. I don't know at this stage. I mean, there may be. Let's have a discussion with legislators, but eventually there may be conversation with, I would assume, governor, because it really was at the executive branch and where it kind of took a sidetrack. So, but we do want to keep the pressure on that and the conversation on that. If at the state level there's not interested in this, we got to think of other things. Right now we're
Sand and gravel, something like that.
well, we're providing a service, the Parkway, and for one of the major users of it, getting no revenue to support the maintenance of that service. So got to take a look at that going forward. And then, like I said, from us, from Parks and Public Works, you want to put park and ride on there? For discussion.
No, I think
What other things would we want to put on there?
I think the things that are on there are really important, and we can get those things. That's fantastic. I don't know that we need to increase I don't know how much we increase our priorities before they become not actually priorities, but secondaries. So.
Like I said, we'll come out of this. This is talking papers with our legislators, but also be a paper we have that when we have the Snoqualmie Valley Governors Association, when we got time to meet with them, this is something we ought to have in our back pocket of, hey, what are we doing about this? Where are we, help me.
Well, and it seems like the running theme on the three things that you talked about with the community center, the 18 expansion and the Parkway, the running theme is it's not just serving Snoqualmie, it's their regional concerns, and we need help with them. So I think they lend them, it lends itself to those conversations.
And at least at some level on the parkway, I mean, the state is more likely to divest itself of roads to maintain than it is to pick up roads to maintain. So it's that one we got to keep pushing. And to tell the truth, one of our champions in that area lost out in the primary.
Which one was that?
Mullet was pushing that force to some extent.
Gosh, you just missed it by that much too. That is,
5 feet, quarter mile, it's all a miss.
that does,
Oh.
it does hurt to lose him as a champion because he was so incredibly helpful with a number of the other things that we've gotten done with regard to the parkway and the interchange. Okay, you got anything else to say about those items? What do you think about the thought of expanding that list from 3 to 4 and adding park and ride?
Oh, I just do that out. You guys pick one.
You good with these 3 or?
I'm good, yeah, because they're pretty big.
Yeah.
Themselves, and so, I think depending also where, where there might be funding in the future is also the other thing. I mean, if there's more in transit in the form of park and ride, yeah, we can have that as a backup type of a thing, but I think these
are vital. Yeah.
without making like a lot of little things, maybe just focusing on.
You want a few key things, otherwise it'll get lost in the wash. I do think maybe that'd be a question for community development though, of call it connection or public transportation or what of, should that be a general subject we keep in front of you guys?
Okay.
I don't want us to lose the bus service we keep having to fight for.
Ever.
So I think each of the chairs are sending the drafts from their meetings to you to combine. So I know I sat through public safety, they did one yesterday.
I'm not going to send this to you.
Well, other than, so I have made revision in my copy of to acknowledge it's not 5 million from the state, minor tweak of 5 million from state and county to support the community center. Yeah, from the side, if I don't remember an email right offhand in which I've been given for public safety, we've had discussion, specific edits or concerns, but if you do, you wake up in the middle of the night and you have a thought, type out an email and send it to me. Okay. Then go back to bed.
All
Okay.
right.
Wow.
Got a motion?
Oh,
Do it,
I have
Jen.
one thing.
Oh, something else?
Yes, we have 2 committee meetings remaining for the year. And there's been a request that we start those early at 4:30. 4:30 start for both
Well, who the heck requested that?
staff.
Oh, then yes, absolutely. Are you guys cool with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, 2 out of 3 of us at least are cool with that.
That
You
is-
good?
Just what it
Yeah.
That is his happy face.
says, man, yeah. If that's what we need to do to get it done, that's what we do.
Thank you.
All right.
Move to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
We're adjourned.